So Nancy Stagliano, True North Therapeutics, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for
Delighted
inviting
to
me.
have you. FiReStarter 2015 company. Congratulations.
Thank you very
That's
much.
exciting.
Happy
It's
to
an
be here.
exclusive group of companies here.
It is.
Right?
It
They're
is.
all on the cutting edge, very SNS in their nature. We want to get at the cutting edge nature of what you're doing. You're doing some biotherapeutics,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Huge interest in this area. We've learned a lot about biotherapeutics since the 80s. There was a time when monoclonal antibodies was kind of the hot thing and hyped, and then it didn't go anywhere, and now we're seeing a resurgence. So we want to talk about what's the vision behind True North? What made you want to start the company and say we need to do this?
So True North is a 17-person company in South San Francisco focusing on neglected diseases. We call them orphan diseases, where there's a small patient population and no approved therapy. And we got very excited about this autoimmune type biology that we thought we could address with a monoclonal antibody, so with that therapeutic modality that could help some of these patients who have no treatment alternatives. And we actually had spun the company out of a former company called iPierian. And so it's the same team now on our second collection of monoclonal antibodies. So we have a good amount of experience in this. And we think that there's just a great opportunity to do some good in a small set of patients.
Right. And what is it about a monoclonal antibody that makes it so unique and great for this application that you're working on?
Yeah. Monoclonal antibodies are very selective targeting agents.
Okay.
So they are designed by nature. We have antibodies, IgGs, you've heard immunoglobulins in your body all the time. We all have them. Now we've taken advantage of Mother Nature's ability to make those, and we use mammalian cells to make monoclonal antibodies as therapeutics. Antibodies recognize a specific target or entity or protein exquisitely selectively.
Okay.
So they don't hit anything else.
Okay.
So a lot of the problems with some of the pills that people take
Yeah.
are that they have side effects.
Right.
And those side effects are often driven by the lack of selectivity of that pill for its target.
Sure.
Not exclusively, but often that's what drives those side effects.
Right.
So with monoclonal antibodies, we know at least that we can get specifically to that target of interest, and we only stick to that. We only bind to that, or we only block that. So it's become an incredibly successful therapeutic modality in the industry now.
Weren't they using monoclonal antibodies to target certain forms of cancer?
They are, and they've been great successes.
Genentech was doing it, right?
Genentech has pioneered that. So Herceptin is
right?
one of the best for breast cancer. Very selective targeting.
Yeah, and it has to be lined up with your DNA and right.
Yeah, so if you have that target, HER2,
genomic thing,
then and you can test for that in a biopsy, in blood work. Then we know that drug should work, and so it's a perfect pairing.
Right.
That's not necessarily always required, that diagnostic therapeutic combination, but in that case it was.
Okay.
Drugs like rituximab that Genentech also pioneered with Roche. That's the same, it's also a monoclonal antibody, but no diagnostic required for that one. Given to a lot of patients with lymphomas, hematologic malignancies.
Right.
So we've taken advantage of what the industry has done well. So now there are easy ways to make these molecules, make these antibodies. So as a small company, we outsource. We can get all of that work done on the outside.
Right.
We focus our energy and innovation on the biology and the science behind the disease.
Now, you talked about unmet diseases, right? How pervasive are these? You hear about them, but I mean, how big is the market, and how do you have to zero in on a certain disease, or can you take a monoclonal antibody and kind of treat an unmet disease and see if it works? How do you work this out?
Well, you have to understand, no matter what type of drug you're developing, right, you have to understand some of the root causes of the disease, right? Okay. And then you pick your target, and you say, okay, this particular protein, in the case of Herceptin in breast cancer, HER2 is the target,
right?
And that protein is causing some of the biology, right, causing the tumor to grow,
right?
And so we want to stop that protein from working. So in the case of True North, we're targeting a protein in the complement system, and the complement's part of our innate immune immune system.
Okay.
It's as old as the sun, but people haven't really understood what its role in disease has been until recently.
Right.
So we've learned, as well as others, that dysregulation of that complement cascade in some of these rare diseases can drive the disease biology.
Okay.
So once you say, okay, I know now what I want to stop, what pathway I want to block,
right.
then you can target your monoclonal to one of those proteins or targets.
Right.
And so we've done that, and again, our target is this protein called C1s.
Okay.
And so it's interesting because the therapeutic that we have in the clinic now can be used to treat a number of these diseases.
Okay.
So you asked about how many patients. There's a disease called cold agglutinin disease. And it's interesting, I'll talk about it tomorrow in particular because it's very unusual. 6,000 people in the United States.
Wow.
So that's what we call ultra-orphan.
Right.
Not very many patients, typically on the average age of about 60. So it presents later in life. There's no known cause, no genetic link.
Okay.
So people develop it.
Though, right?
Debilitating anemia, thrombosis, blood clots, all kinds of very serious consequences.
All the things you don't want when you're 60.
You don't want, no.
Right.
You never want them. And,
right.
and so the idea really is to use our drug to stop the system from attacking its own red blood cells and causing the anemia and causing the blood clots and the thrombosis.
Right.
That same target, C1s, also plays a role in another disease, bullous pemphigoid. This is a disease of the skin. Even a very elderly population, even older group of folks, 70 to 80 years old.
Okay.
Again, no genetic cause that's known, but that complement system in those patients causes the two layers of skin to separate. Huge blistering disorder, terrible disease, high mortality and morbidity, very painful. And again, an elderly population, also about 5,000-6,000 patients.
Right.
So we are fortunate in the sense that while we have small numbers of patients with each unique disease, we believe that our therapeutic is applicable to multiple diseases.
Right.
So that helps us in some ways to support a business case.
Sure, you get
right?
you get multiple applications for a
and
single,
multiple chances for success.
Right. But all of this has to go through a regulatory process.
Absolutely.
That's excruciating.
Absolutely.
Right.
It is, but you know the good part is the FDA and the EMA in Europe, they really work with small companies, with large companies, to develop drugs for these orphan diseases.
Okay.
They work hard to make sure that you have an open line of communication with them at various points during that process, and that you also get, if you start to make progress, that you get accelerated review.
Yeah, because these are unmet diseases and people are in pain and they need help.
Absolutely,
right?
and there are really no alternatives.
They give you an accelerated path.
Yes.
That's great.
It is, and it's relatively new. The last few years, the FDA has been really supporting this type of work and making sure that they're not the bottleneck for this.
So the demographics, I mean, we're getting 76 million plus baby boomers are moving into their peak years for healthcare, right? I mean, True North is there at a time potentially with some solutions to a population where your market's going to be expanding, right?
It probably will.
Yeah.
It probably will.
And it's global too, right? Are you focused in you're in Europe as well?
Yeah, actually our clinical trial is going on in Europe now.
Really? Okay.
And we will bring the trial to the US next year. But we started in Europe because the European regulatory environment's really interesting in the sense that you can do a trial with all these different types of patients we're testing for under one protocol.
Okay.
In the US, the FDA would say you have to write 4 different documents to do that.
Right.
And you would have to go to probably 4 different hospitals and 4 different centers, etc. So we're doing our trial in Vienna, which is really interesting because they have
there.
It's beautiful. It's not a bad place to have to visit.
That's a pain.
And,
Too bad.
What we don't do for work.
At Christmas time, it's absolutely gorgeous.
I haven't gone there yet.
Oh,
at that
enjoy
point.
that.
But they have the largest hospital in Europe, in Vienna.
They do in Vienna.
Yes,
right.
And so they have all the patients.
Largest hospital in Europe.
Single center hospital, about
great test
2,500 beds. It's a very large center.
Wow.
And it's a great place to then work with physicians there who are specialists in each of these diseases.
Right.
And who have the patients, because they're not, these are rare patients, right?
Okay.
And so you need to find that intersection of that expertise from the doctor and the availability of patients to test your drug on.
Right. So I have one last question for you. I mean, we could talk for hours. That's great stuff. But would you be inclined to license the medicine to a larger company for bigger distribution,
Mm-hmm.
or how do you go about getting the drug to market?
It's a good question. In the world, probably in the last few weeks, it's looking a little different, but the world had changed from the point of view of the potential for small companies to develop drugs further on their own without needing to license to pharmaceutical companies, or if they thought that you had the wherewithal to develop it. The public markets, of course, remain an option for companies. They weren't, right, a few years ago for small companies.
They do, right.
And so even with a turbulent market, like in the last couple of weeks, I think that allows small companies to contemplate taking a drug forward on their own. Right. But we still absolutely consider the option of working with a pharmaceutical company who's done this so many times.
Yeah.
And it basically will come down to a decision around what's the best way for the drug to be developed and distributed.
Would you feel comfortable running a publicly traded company?
I'm up for it.
Are you?
Sure. Yeah.
Really? Great.
Yeah.
Well, we need to talk more about
this.
Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on being a FiReStarter company.
Thanks so much.
We're very excited to hear more about it.
This is my second time, you know.
It is?
Yes. The first time was a company, Cytomix Therapeutics. So
right, and they're making headroads, right? I mean,
they should be going public this week.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a big week for FiReStarters.
So dinner's on you?
I'm not the CEO anymore, but I'm very hopeful for them. I do.
Fantastic.
I'm very hopeful for them. They've been a great success.
Great. Well,
thank you for having me.
We'll probably have you back 3 times at the charm.
I hope so.
You're just getting going.
Thanks so
much.
Pleasure
Cheers.
to talk to you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.